Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of Windham City Council this Tuesday, 1 May 2018. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Windham is being built. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Please stand for the opening prayer and welcome. We pray for guidance in the Council's decision-making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Windham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff here tonight for the Ordinary Council meeting. I advise that in accordance with the Council resolution of statutory meeting held in November 2017, I will be chairing this meeting as the Mayor is an apology tonight. The Mayor is attending an international trade exhibition on waste technology and educational tour of alternative waste treatment sites in Europe to understand the social and community considerations in investments being made in new waste disposal technologies. Some of you may have seen the notices in the foyer, but for those who didn't, I would like to make you aware of the following. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website. Whilst all care have been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2, apologies and request for leave. Madam CEO, are there apologies for this evening?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. There are, in fact, a couple of apologies this evening. We have an apology, as you've already noted, from Councillor Peter Maynard, who is on an international educational tour, and also Councillor Intaj Khan, who's currently on an approved leave of absence, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam CEO. We have a leave of absence, and therefore we have a motion to put that leave of absence to be granted for Councillor Henry Barlow for 14 May to 8 of June 2018 inclusive. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Kim. Seconder? Councillor Ton. Councillors, any discussion? All those in favor? Against? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest, conflicting personal interest in any item on the agenda. Councillors, does anyone have any conflicts of interest that they wish to declare in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Head.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have a conflict of interest on 6.4.1, which is WYP 102999/17, which is the planning permit application development of small Riverbend City Centre Catalyst site at 59 Combin Drive, where I have commercial buildings in the area, so that's why I have a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Anyone else have a conflict they want to declare? Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. That the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, 3 April 2018 as prepared and circulated be confirmed, and special council meeting held on Tuesday, 17 April 2018, as prepared and circulated, be confirmed. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor John Gibbons. Seconder? Councillor Paula. Thank you. Councillors, any discussion? All in favor? Against? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, deputation and presentations. Tonight, I will be presenting the Mayoral Youth Awards for the March quarter 2018. Windham City is proud to recognize the fantastic achievements and contributions made by young people in the community. Each quarter, a number of young people aged 12 to 25 years are presented with a Mayoral Youth Award, which includes a certificate of recognition and a grant of $500. The award recognizes achievements in 3 categories: sport, arts and culture, and community service, volunteering, and leadership. The applications are assessed by a panel that consists of the Windham City Mayor, the Youth Project Officer, Youth Services staff members, and young people from the Windham Youth Task Force. Recipients of the award also go into the running to be named Windham's Young Achiever of the Year. Tonight, I have the pleasure of making 3 presentations for the March quarter 2018. The first recipient is Kelly Sheila Tiariki. May I request Sheila to come. Who's Kelly Sheila? You. Kelly Sheila is being recognized for her achievements in sport and community service, volunteering, and leadership. She is 16 years old and lives in Werribee. Kelly Sheila is a member of the Victoria University Netball Club and was chosen to represent the Australian Wanderers netball team in England in 2017. Every Sunday, Kelly Sheila volunteers at the Cook Island Christian Church to lead the children's story time. She has also volunteered to successfully coordinate the Windham Central College Year 10 Formal in 2017 and actively fundraises for the Victoria University Netball Club. Kelly Sheila shows great dedication to sport and currently plays rugby, netball, and volleyball. She volunteers her time to coach both the under-11s Cook Island netball and volleyball teams. Congratulations, Kelly Sheila, on your achievements in sport and community service, volunteering, leadership. Would you like to say a few words, Kelly Sheila?
Hi. I'd like to thank my teacher, Miss Ferranda, for nominating me for this award and introducing me to these kind of things. And I'd like to thank my mum for driving me around everywhere to these kind of stuff and supporting me with my sports and education. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Congratulations again. Next, we have Gary Wang. Please come forward. Kerry is being recognized for her contributions in community service, volunteering, and leadership. She is 17 years old and lives in Tarnit. Kerry has volunteered in multiple leadership positions within Thomas Carr College, including Social Justice Captain, SRC, College Ambassador, President of the Thomas Carr College Venice Conference, and Liturgy Captain. Kerry volunteers her time to provide after-school tutoring for primary school students at St. Francis of Assisi. She also has acted as an interpreter and student helper during the Sister School summer camps. Congratulations, Kerry, on your achievement in community service, volunteering, and leadership. Would you like to say a few words? You can give that to your mom.
Firstly, I would like to say thank you for giving me this award, because I've actually applied for this award last year when my teachers were chasing me around in the corridor and like everyone's trying to get me to like write something for this award. And I nearly forgot about this until I got a call from Lisa a few weeks ago. Yeah, I didn't even know that this thing still exists. And yeah, I would like to say a big thank you for choosing me and having like recognized me for doing all this. And I really enjoy doing all the volunteering around the Wyndham area, both at school and at other social organizations. And yeah, thank you for having all these opportunities like volunteering at Tani Library and all these opportunities for me to do some volunteering and contribute to the society.
Well done.
Thank you. Congratulations, Isra. So the final recipient is Bailey Lewis, and he is not able to join us tonight. So congratulations to Bailey as well, and congratulations once again to all our mayoral youth award winners this evening. Next on the agenda is item 6, officers' reports. 6.1, petitions. 6.11, response to petition 17/07, proposed car parking arrangements at Prince and Queen's Court, Werribee. Report is in page 10 to 15. Recommendation is in page 11, and there are no attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Kim McElhinney, and seconder, Councillor Heather Marcus. Thank you. Councillor McElhinney, as the mover of the motion, would you like to speak at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor. This has been an ongoing issue for the local residents of Queen's Court and Princess Highway for some time, and I'd like to thank the residents for meeting with officers to discuss their concerns. We understand that it's always a hesitation when there is parking restrictions placed on local streets. However, there really is no alternative, particularly when emergency vehicles, local community buses, and including at one stage a coroner's vehicle not being able to access the street due to traffic congestion. I would like to say the feedback has been extremely important to the council, and it was disappointing that of the possible 50 residents that only 10 responses were received. However, they were taken on board, and while we've got a two-stage approach, a review will occur within 3 months, including input from the residents following the implementation of stage 1 and then stage 2. The lead petitioner has been made aware of the report and the proposal, and if the recommendation is accepted tonight, residents will be notified by a letter immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Do we have another speaker for the motion? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I would just like to say we had a lot of people come to the Irrimu Ward Councils and speak to us. The residents were very concerned with what was happening in Princes Court and Queen's Court, and we had meetings on site with the residents. And although there mightn't have been a lot of responses, some were responding on behalf of the other residents. And the council officers, I think, have done a wonderful job working with the residents, coming up with the proposals that are in here tonight, and hopefully that these options that are there will be satisfactory to the residents living in both of those courts. I know and I understand how difficult it is living in a court with a lot of other residents coming in parking, but I think this is a good proposal that will satisfy all parties, and hopefully the residents will soon come back to us and tell us if they're not happy, so we would ask them to do that. Unfortunately, I had a very late call from a resident tonight who wanted to speak to me, but I was unable to speak to her at this late stage, but I will contact her first thing in the morning. So thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, would any councillor who has not yet spoken want to speak? As there are no further speakers, Councillor Kim McElhinney, as the mover, would you like to? No.
I'd just like to concur with what Councillor Marcus said. I also had a number of phone calls over the weekend, and I'd just like to thank the officer, Shane Waldron, for the follow-up today and yesterday with his officers to the residents. Thank you.
Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? All against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 6.2 Strategic Reports. 6.2.1 Waste and Litter Strategy Implementation, Recycling Promotions. Report is in pages 16 to 22, recommendation on page 17, and there are no attachments. Councillor, do I have a mover? Councillor Tony Hooper. Seconder? Councillor John Gibbons. Thank you. Councillor Tony Hooper, as the mover, would you like to speak at this time?
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'd like to speak to this report, and in particular the element about modernising our garbage bins to have red lids to align with Australian standards. Representing a ward with a mix of both new and established areas, I understand the complexities of standardising our bin infrastructure. Delaying this changeover will increase future costs, and therefore I support the officer's recommendation to expand the transition of standardised garbage bin infrastructure for all new bin requests, as well as other recommendations as presented within this report. Restricting standardised bins to new housing estates uncovers a number of complications, and these challenges include determining what actually is a new estate and therefore determining what colour bin lid to issue, managing communications with council's bin delivery contractor in response to which colour bin to deliver, and staged land releases resulting in potential inconsistencies in colours within new development areas. The more streamlined recommendation of all new or replacement garbage bins being issued with red lids from July 1 means fewer bins will need to be replaced with the bulk changeover scheduled in 2020. This change will result in a cost saving of over $250,000, with over 5,500 new or replacement bins having been issued within the last 12 months. Whilst I acknowledge there will be a transitional period where there will be inconsistencies in bin colours across the city, this will be rectified with the full standardisation which will be tendered next year and included within Council's new collections contract set for implementation in 2020. This will be further advanced through educational campaigns and key messages from our customer service team, which will need to both support residents and our internal customer service staff to ensure a smooth transition. Importantly, our collections contractor, JJ Richards, have been made aware of these changes and are comfortable with this new arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hoover. Councillors, do we have a speaker against the motion? Against. Do we have another speaker for the motion? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would really like to say that we certainly have a very large problem in front of everyone. In fact, the whole world does, with what is happening with our waste and litter. And I'd just like to say how proud I am of our environment team and the amount of work that council officers have put into this report that's before us tonight. This is my portfolio, and so I have the pleasure of working with our council officers, and I just know the amount of work and effort that we are putting in to educate all of our residents here in Wyndham. So if we are to make a difference, we have to ask our residents to come with us. And so I think if you have read through this report before us tonight, I think you'll find that there's some very interesting, and I won't go into the transition of our bin standardisation, but I think if you read that as of July, as you all know, we reduced the token to 1, which some of our residents were quite unhappy about, but we have increased the hard waste rubbish to three collections a year. So as of July the 1st, we advised we would explore additional waste offerings to everybody to make up for that loss of that 1 ticket. And then in our recommendation was to have a pop-up recycling days, which we've had, and they were extremely successful, where people came to Wootton Road and were able to leave their mattresses, any of their furniture. But we did not just put that furniture down into our landfill. That furniture and everything that was left there went to the men's shed, it went to the charity. So, you know, this is a great way of recycling. We are going to have discounted mattress disposable months. We are going to have green waste disposable promotions at the transfer station, and additional recycling services. And I'm very proud to say our girls one night had an evening here where everyone was invited to come in here and bring all of the clothes they didn't want, and other people could choose something and take away, and what was left over went to the charity again. So as you can see, this council is extremely proactive. The pop-up recycling days, as I said before...
Councillor Marcus, you have 30 seconds.
Sorry.
No, 30 seconds.
So, all right, discounted mattress disposable promotion, hard weight service flexibility for residents, and brochures will come out. But I can't do any more to that. But what I want to say, and please don't cut me short, on Saturday, the Environment Committee had a trip down to the RDF. We took all of our members of that Environment Committee down there, and they were absolutely amazed to see the work that's happened in that tip over the last 12 months. We have a lovely lady called Isabella, and when you take your green waste down there, you will not get past Isabella if you've got plastic or timber hidden in that green waste. We now have brought in a big machinery to recycle all of that green waste. So that's all going into the landfill. So I just want to say congratulations to all of our people that work down at the RDF for the work that they're doing. I thought it was a very clean, lovely place when I got down there on Saturday with our members, and all of our team members were extremely, what I would like to say, if you've got any furniture to take down there, we do have a shed down there, and it is open from 9 to 12:30 every day of the week if you wish to go down there, and I can tell you now, there's some super items in that shed to buy.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. That was very important information. Thank you. Any more speakers? Any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Look, as a follow-on to this, we did mention earlier on in the meeting tonight that the Mayor is currently on an education study and looking at the technologies for waste to energy. Now, I am well aware, because we've been to a number of meetings and had a number of discussions, the State Government of Victoria is very keen to look at turning our waste, instead of just filling holes and then covering them up with clay liners, they're very keen to see if we can actually turn our waste into energy. And as a council, with one of the few rubbish disposal facilities available in Victoria, that if we're able to look at a way of doing that, not only does it mean that we can probably eliminate up to 90% of airspace for rubbish by turning it into ash, but we can actually then turn that waste into electricity that can be pumped back into the grid, and actually we can actually make money, which will go towards helping provide facilities and infrastructure and services for the people of the City of Wyndham. And so I do wish the Mayor and the two council officers that have gone with him all the best on this education tour, because just filling holes, no matter how much we recycle, we are well aware of what's happening with China, knocking back a large variety of different plastics, is that we have to find an alternative way. And if we can turn it into energy, I don't have to preach to anybody about the cost of electricity and coal-fired power stations and whatever, people, whether they like them or they don't like them. This is one way of actually creating energy, and if we can make a few dollars for the people of Wyndham from this study tour, then that'll be a bonus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Any other further speakers? Councillor Josh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Look, I just, in addition to Councillor Barlow's points, which I think are very valid and something that this council wholeheartedly endorses, I always, where I can, illustrate the efficiency of this council, and I think it is important to consider the context, particularly in the financial implications of this report that states that we're only looking at a $10 increase on the waste management charge, or about 3.5%. Compare that to today's Herald Sun article of some councils hiking their garbage collection fees by up to 40%. A great example of this council doing everything it can to keep costs low, but also, on the other hand, paying incredibly high taxes, particularly in the context of the landfill levy. We know today from the Victorian budget that there is almost nothing in the budget that details, particularly from the Sustainability Fund, the fund that is funded by landfill taxes, how they intend to resolve the recycling crisis in this state, particularly when you consider that this council, whilst is a collection of other councils in terms of the revenue of the RDF, but forked out around $144 million in landfill taxes over 4 years, which, as Councillor Barlow has pointed out, could be used to fund the waste to energy project that we need, and indeed the Victorian Government's report that says that one has to be built here in the western suburbs, and we look forward to working, I'm sure, with the Victorian Government in securing that investment here in our city, because we recognise that that investment is core business to solving not only the recycling and rubbish issues of this state, but also that we have the capability, and as we've got council officers and indeed the Mayor off overseas on the education study, working out best practice to deliver that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Further speakers? As there are no further speakers, and Councillor Hooper, you want to say something?
Look, I just quickly wanted to add, when I came onto council, I was actually a sceptic of the 90% diversion target. But I will say that Peter McKinnon and Simon Clay have converted me. Their professionalism and their foresight and the direction that they're leading our TIP into a new generation of waste energy recycling, it's exciting. And I look forward to seeing how that journey unfolds over the next few years. And to be part of it is really awesome. So thank you.
Any other further speakers? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 6.3, policy/advocacy. 6.3.1, Wyndham Family Friendly Charter. Report is in pages 23 to 26, recommendation page 23, attachments page 27 and 28. Councillors, do I have a mover?
Yes.
Councillor Shaw. Seconder, Councillor McElhenney. Councillor Shaw, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Mr Deputy Mayor, I am pleased that the Family Friendly City Charter is being presented tonight for adoption. One of the main reasons I stood for council was to improve the quality of life of families across Wyndham and to make a contribution to the community of Werribee that shaped me growing up here as a child and now as a single parent. Despite the fact that we are one of the youngest councils across Australia and we have a large percentage of families with children, I am glad to see the community consultation we received strongly supported a broadening of the definition of families to include any people who have caring relationships. I say this because our policy frameworks at council try and put people first, and it takes all kinds of people and families to contribute to a stronger community. Adopting this charter tonight demonstrates council's commitment to ensuring that the views, needs and aspirations of families underpin all decisions that this council makes. The charter outlines principles and guidelines which will form how council and its partners work with and support families. I want to personally thank the community members of council's Family Friendly City Portfolio Committee, which I chair, for their guidance and feedback as we have gone on the journey of being one of the first councils to adopt quite a different family-friendly charter. If adopted tonight, the charter will be launched and promoted at a series of community events. This will provide council with the opportunity to talk to residents about what being a family-friendly city means and to help us understand how we can use this charter to achieve the best outcomes for Wyndham's families. I will also be talking with the Executive Council to look at ways we can make sure there is a good understanding of the charter across the organisation, as I think there will be many opportunities for us to apply the charter to our thinking, whether it relates to services, infrastructure or policies that affect people and families in Wyndham. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Do we have a speaker for the motion? Another speaker. Councillor McKenna, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Shaw, who's been a passionate advocate to make this charter happen. While Wyndham 2040 vision sets out the vision of a family-friendly city, it's important that the family-friendly charter recognises what a family is, having regard to the Victorian Charter of Human Rights. In simple terms, it is two or more individuals that come together as a unit to support and care for each other. The Family-Friendly Charter recognises the diverse ranges of families in our community and its policy direction and delivery of services. The importance of absolutely the family unit is paramount and can vary amongst community groups. From a Safer Communities perspective, the Charter reinforces Council's commitment to all forms of violence in the Wyndham community. I hope Council's first step in the communication following endorsement is to forward this charter to all our community groups, and I hope they will embrace this document. So congratulations, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Do we have, or councillors, would any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 6.4, Strategic and Town Planning. Councillor Marcus. Six 6.4.1 WYP 10229/17 Planning Permit Application Development of Small Riverbend Catalyst Site, which is 59 Comben Drive, Werribee. Report is in pages 29 to 68. Recommendation pages 30 to 39. Attachments in pages 69 to 85. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Henry Barlow. Seconder, Councillor Tony Hooper. Councillor Barlow, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Look, I'll be very brief. We've already had another report come in for a large development in the Werribee Central Business District. I must admit, it's one of the reasons I came back onto council back in 2016. I read in our local paper how there was a strategy and a plan for the future growth and the modernisation of the Central Business District in Werribee. And for a city that's now got over 250,000 people living in it, I think it's important that we do have our Central Business District, the capital of our municipality of Werribee, be part of the 21st century. And part of that is that we have an obligation to help and assist the businesses in the area to continue to grow and employ locals. And by doing that, some of the plans that we've got that we're bringing forward is to get more people living in that Central Business District. And by doing that, it will help actually the economy of the Werribee area. It's also a challenge. It's a challenge for a lot of people who, like myself, going back over 50 years ago, used to live just off the main street. I must admit, if my parents still lived off the main street, they may not be happy about the direction that we're going with multi-storey buildings and bringing more people into the Central Business District, but that's the way of the future. We can't continue. Eventually we're going to run out of space where people are going to live. And we are looking at making sure that the Central Business District of Werribee is a city of the 21st century. And I think that it's important that we provide these facilities. And this is going to be a great spot overlooking the Werribee River and Wyndham Park. We're well aware that I think we're spending about $13 million in upgrading Wyndham Park. So it's going to be a real icon to the city. People will be able to live close by. They're close to different types of shopping, less than probably a 2-minute walk to the train station and to the full bus services that allow people to travel all over the municipality. I think it's going to be an area where a lot of people are going to be putting their hands up to want to live in the apartments in that site. And I think that we will see this as an icon building into the future. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Do we have another speaker for the motion? Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This is the second of, I think it's 4 or 5 catalyst sites we've got. Is it 5 or 4 catalyst sites we've got in the Central Business District. And I'm really looking forward to that one being developed, this one being developed. The other one, the permit was issued some months ago, and the story is that that's going to be proceeding soon. Council's received a planning permit application for the proposed development of the land at 59 Comben Drive, also known as a small riverbend site. The site is one of our catalyst sites within the Werribee City Centre and is owned by the Wyndham City Council. The proposal is for the purpose of mixed use, 10-storey building comprising 2 retail tenancies and 100 apartments, and reduction in car parking requirement of 20 spaces. The application has been advertised to immediately adjoining owners and occupiers. A total of 6 objections have been received, primarily relating to car parking and access to properties to and from the laneway. The proposal is consistent with the provisions of the Wyndham Planning Scheme, including the state and local government planning objectives. The purpose of the activity centre zone and parking overlay and provisions of car parking, bicycle facilities and apartment developments. I really support this, and I'd ask the councillors to make sure they support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillors, would any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Okay. Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? All against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Can we ask Councillor just to come in? Other reports. 6.5.1 Wyndham Street Lighting Bulk Change Contracts. Report is in pages 86 to 89. Recommendation, page 87. There are no attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Tony Hooper. Seconder? Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Tony Hooper, you want to speak?
The report speaks for itself.
Any speaker against the motion? Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. Those in favor? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 6.5.2 Werribee Football Club lease. Report is in pages 90 to 93. Recommendation, page 91. There are no attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Kim McKellen. Seconder? Councillor Mia Shaw. Any speaker? Or Councillor Kim, you want to speak? Anybody wants to speak against the motion? Any other speaker, councillors?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I am pleased to support the motion to commence statutory procedures to enter into new leases with the Werribee Football Club. The Werribee Football Club was established as a team in the VFA in 1965 and has been an important part of our community since that time. I note the leases deal with Crown land owned by the state government, for which Council is the Committee of Management, and relate solely to the newly refurbished Chirnside Park Pavilion. I also note that the new areas such as function spaces will need to be captured in the leases. I want to thank staff in advance for ensuring that the overall community interest will be best served through such leases. We all know that given the growth in population, demand for sporting and community facilities in Wyndham affects both the newer suburbs and housing estates, as well as the older areas that are also growing, such as Werribee. This is why, in my view, the lease needs to embed Council's expectations that any access to and use of shared spaces such as function centres need to support a diverse range of community uses, while ensuring the facilities can run effectively. The principle of shared community use underpin the investments that successive councils, state and federal governments, and indeed sporting clubs did at Chirnside Park. This is why I'm confident that this principle needs to feature strongly in any renewed leases for this site. The Werribee Football Club has an extensive history in our community and a very prosperous future. They have a strong tradition and are a community-based club. Entering into these new leases provides them with the support they need to continue being an important part of our community for many years to come. I also wanted to state my support for the new leases to ensure that any future uses of the facilities and spaces complies with council sports and social policies. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, would any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? There being none, councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 6.5.3, Assembly of Councillors report is in page 94, recommendation page 94, attachment is page 95 to 98. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor John Gibbons. Seconder, Tony Hooper, Councillor. Would anyone want to speak for the motion? Against? Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Next to the agenda, item 7, notices of motion. Notice of motion 575, Emerald Park Estate, Tarnit. Report is in page 99 to 100. Motion, page 100. There are no attachments. Councillor, do I have a mover?
Yes.
Councillor George Gilligan is moved. Any seconder? Councillor Ann. George Gilligan, would you like to?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, in accordance with the process with the notice of motion, I'll just note for the record the motion as being read. This notice of motion tonight represents a request for council to advocate for a change to Victorian legislation that would provide greater protection to landowners who attempt to purchase a block of land or indeed a home off the plan in good faith, only to see a developer tear up their contract on their terms. It has been brought to my attention that this has recently occurred in Wyndham at a major residential development in the Tarneit North precinct. The Emerald Park Estate in Tarneit North represents an 11-staged development with over 400 lots proposed. Whilst these matters are complex in nature, I will provide a summary of the facts for your consideration this evening. Firstly, in order to complete the stages in this estate and have the separate land titles registered, the developer needs to comply with several requirements, including arranging the water, sewerage, internet, power and road services. It is understood from evidence available to me that the planning permit which allowed this subdivision to occur was issued in 2013. However, supporting engineering and other plans for the first 3 stages of the estate were not submitted to council for assessment until early 2016. At this stage, the full requirements of the planning permit and relevant servicing authorities have not been met by the developer, and as a result, the first 3 stages, or 119 lots of the subdivision, cannot be released to purchasers for development in the Emerald Park estate. I note that the developer on their website states that the first 3 stages of this development are sold out. Last month, I met with a half a dozen of those landowners who were brave enough to tell me about their experiences in relation to those purchases. They felt the developer did not take reasonable steps to develop the land in a reasonable time period and sold the land to them prior to seeking the final approvals needed to commence development. I note that due to the length of time between a contract of sale and the delay of approvals of the 3 stages, for some lots, that has enabled the developer to trigger what is known as a sunset clause in the contracts of sale, meaning that they, that is the developer, can tear up the contract, leaving the landowner with little recourse except mounting a case to the Supreme Court, which is an incredible cost burden on families to have to endure. The New South Wales Government passed laws in 2015 that meant that a developer who wished to rescind a contract must seek consent from the purchaser to go through a termination. And if that buyer didn't agree, the onus would fall to the developer to justify that termination and apply to the Supreme Court for permission to revoke the contract. As I stated, this is quite a complex issue, but the outcome is very straightforward. We have families who have been waiting for years to build their dream home, only to have the rug pulled out from under them. They are left with a heartbreaking dilemma. Either seek to repurchase a lot that a sunset clause has been enacted upon, that they thought was going to be theirs from a decision that they made years ago, or walk away with only their deposit in a much more expensive property market. And of course, on the flip side, the developer who still owns the land can go ahead with the development and resell that land at today's market value. I want to make clear that this motion is about considering the impact that current property consumer laws are having in greenfield developments like this one in our city. It is also why this motion calls on Council to write to the developer and to all landowners to clarify the planning and subdivision approvals process. I will add for the record, Mr Deputy Mayor, that in Victoria it is entirely legal for developers to trigger the sunset clause on contracts and receive a windfall by reselling the land or land and home packages at higher prices, and that is the problem. It is for the aforementioned reasons that an investigation is warranted, and that is why this motion requests the Minister for Consumer Affairs to examine the evidence available, to consider the veracity of the claims made by the developer to purchasers about the planning.
30 seconds, Councillor Gilligan.
And finally, this motion calls on the Ministers for Planning and Consumer Affairs to end this problem in Victoria by legislating to protect consumers, as New South Wales has done, to strengthen development in cities like ours, which are experiencing significant housing booms. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, do we have a speaker against the motion? Any other speaker for the motion? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I concur with Councillor Gilligan on this. There are some questions to be asked, and I'm looking at it from the point of view of the consumer, people who are trying to buy into possibly into their first home. In good faith, I would assume that they've paid a deposit and they've sat there waiting for a great deal of time. And I do notice in the rationale here that it appears that the developer is blaming this council on the delays in the planning process to allow them to go ahead and develop this land. And I query that, and it'll be interesting if we have that documented somewhere, because if it's incorrect, then they obviously are telling what we call in the Australian colloquialism, pork pies. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I will admit the item 1 by Councillor Gilligan on the consumer affairs laws and that adopted by New South Wales, I don't know what they are, but I'm taking them in good faith that they are there to protect the everyday punter who's trying to buy a home. And if that's the case, I'm fully supportive of this being looked at, and with interest as to what the Victorian government will come back to us and say about the possible protection of consumers.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillors, would any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I thank Councillor Gilligan for putting this notice of motion up tonight, but I don't have enough information from the developer's point of view, from the council's point of view, for the landowners, and I think it would be completely wrong of me, having been a builder and a developer in this city, to vote for something that I do not have enough information on, so I will be abstaining from voting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any other councillors who wants to speak? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Look, I also I support this notice of motion. We just recently discussed and adopted the family-friendly city charter, and I think that families in this city who are disadvantaged through this sunset clause and possibly what developers could do, I think it's really important that we actually work to advocate and protect families and people in our community from these types of things. So I'll be supporting this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Any other councillor who wants to speak? Councillor Ang.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So I have also been contacted by residents on this issue. So, and I'm aware that we have many residents being impacted on this. And I think to be fair for our residents, and also I think this motion is quite reasonable. So therefore I support this notice of motion. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I am also speaking in support of this motion. Having built my first home in Wyndham and the journey that it takes to get there, finding a block of land, going through thousands, well, it feels like thousands of houses to find the right footprint for what property you're going to whack on top of it, it's a journey filled with uncertainty and risk. You don't know what house is going to end up on there. You know, you might pick off the plan, but you just don't know. You don't know what how the neighbours are going to evolve. You don't know what sort of community that you're going into. And to have more uncertainty with the sunset clause hanging over properties that can be just wrung out from underneath you and chucking all of your dreams and all that work aside, I think is absolutely abysmal. And I think we really do, as a state, need to follow New South Wales legislation and actually put the onus back on the property owner to have to either go to the deposit holders or to the court in order to justify any decision such as this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Any other councillors who wants to speak?
Right of reply.
Okay, right of reply. So, Councillor Josh Gilligan, would you like to?
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think it's important, if I can, Councillor Marcus, just to clarify in relation to the documentation that is available to us as councillors for consideration in this decision. We have been provided with information from the Planning Department, which has outlined the progressive nature of this development from the inception in 2013 to today, with significant detail around the subdivision approvals, the engineering approvals, and indeed the overall planning permit approvals. And it is important that that is put on the record because that demonstrates the rigour of information available to us in order to vote on this decision. This decision is a fully informed one based upon the information available to us within the Planning Department, also what is available to us according to the law, and what is available in major newspapers over the last 2 years about similar related incidents where developers are essentially facing questions around sunset clauses and the use of sunset clauses in developments, which is precisely what this motion in the first half of it essentially suggests to do in order to provide all available evidence of this council to the Minister to consider as part of their deliberations on potential changes to the Victorian legislation, as we hope they do in relation to this motion. So I just thought it was important to put all of that on the record for anybody that views this footage tonight, considers the context of the decision that this council is going to make, and knowing that this is based on rigour of evidence and is fundamentally going to be based exactly on that. So I just thought I would point that out as well. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? All against? Abstain? Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Next on the agenda, item 8, Council Seal. 8.1 Tender Award C1943/18, Supply of Geosynthetic Materials for Sulfide Construction. Report is in pages 101 to 106. Recommendation 101, no attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor John Gibbons. Seconder. Councillor Tony Hopper. Do I have a speaker for the motion? Against? For.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I note that even though we may not be able to start this work until after the VCAT appeal has been resolved, which will be early July at the earliest, the design of the cell has been approved by an EPA auditor. I also note that the full, proper and transparent procurement and contract policies and procedures have been followed as outlined in detail in this report. Mr Deputy Mayor, I respect the right of the Western Region Environment Centre to pursue their third-party appeal rights to appeal Council's recent EPA works approval. That is a choice they've made to pursue their objectives regarding waste management, but I'm just wanting to highlight, which other councillors have done previously, that it will have an impact on our community. The delays we will face from the VCAT appeal will cost us money, and if this costs us money, this means there could be an impact on the level and timing of capital works to deliver to the community. Mr Deputy Mayor, the recent problems councils across Australia are facing with handling recycled material no longer diverted to China is a real and urgent problem for councils, including Wyndham, and some of these have already been spoken about tonight. The delays caused by the VCAT appeal adds even more complexity to the challenges facing council. We have an obligation as a council to responsibly manage our RDF facility from environmental, social and economic perspectives. We also have an obligation to ensure the RDF operates effectively, especially since the profits from it go directly to funding a big chunk of our annual capital works budget. I applaud our staff for proceeding with the preparation of this tender so that materials can be tested and acquired without causing further delays. My thoughts on this tender also apply to the next tender award on tonight's agenda, but I'll not repeat these when that item and motion is debated next. While the following brief points may be slightly off topics from this tender, I do want to make them to highlight the complexity of the challenge we face in this space. The challenges we face as a municipality, a state and as a country in terms of finding new financial, social and environmentally sustainable solutions to treat waste cannot be understated. This is one reason I'm glad the Council has agreed to send senior staff and our Mayor to find out how similar challenges are being handled in Europe. I am trusting that this fact-finding mission will help us lead the state in waste solutions, and I would note that an overwhelming majority of our community want governments to take the lead during these recycling and waste challenges Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Would any councillor who has not yet spoken wish to speak? Councillor Josh Gilligan.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. And as the computer quite rightly pointed out, do not turn off your computer. Well, do not turn off the RDF. The RDF certainly delivers significant economic benefit. In fact, as Councillor Shaw has pointed out, I think in our budget papers, it's a bit over, I think it's 11.03 million, if I'm correct, Binder, in terms of overall revenue write down, or some $3.5 to $4 million that Councillor Shaw has pointed out that would have otherwise been redistributed into capital works. Big sums of money. And it is important to put that on the record in the context of this particular motion and let us all hope that we can get on with this project and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Any other councillors who want to speak? Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 8.2, Tender Award C1946/18, Supply of Geomembrane Materials for Cell 5 Construction. Report is in pages 107 to 112. Recommendation 107, page 107, no attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Heather Marcus. Seconder? Just Gil. Oh, sorry. John Gibbons. Sorry.
They look very similar, don't they?
Yeah,
No, there's three. That's okay.
okay.
Representing the majority demographic of our community.
Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. Oh, sorry. Yep, sorry. Councillor Heather Marcus.
Thank you. Look, there's three of these contracts tonight, and I would like to say that we are very concerned that we will be running out of airspace, and we cannot just sit here and do nothing. We have to move on to make sure that we have works in place when we get that permit through from VCAT. And, you know, an additional consideration is the risk of the extended closure of the RDF. Now, if that does occur, Wyndham is in trouble with what we're going to do with our landfill. So it is very important that we have everything in place. And if you've been lucky enough to go out there and see this huge cell, which I got cut off from before to explain, it's enormous. And this is why the money, you might all think that it's a lot of money to put this cell in place, but it's an absolute huge big hole that we're following in the quarry, and that's why the figures, you know, and the next one coming up are all the same. Wyndham, we have a responsibility to our residents. We cannot not go ahead and have everything put in place, because we will win and we will get this contract through to make sure that we can go ahead and continue with our landfill out there. And I just hope every resident of this city knows that we are being held up and it's costing this city a lot of money. So, Charlene, I do hope you'll put a good report in the paper for next week's banner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, do we have a speaker against the motion? Any other speaker for the motion? I now put the motion to a vote. All in favor? All against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 8.3, tender award C1932/18, construction of landfill sulfide. Report 113, page 113 to 118. Recommendation, page 113. No attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Tony Hooper. Seconder, John Gibbons. Councillor John Gibbons. Councillor Tony Hooper, would you like to speak?
No, I think enough's been said about this tip.
Yep. That's rubbish.
Not rubbish.
Do we have a speaker against the motion? Is there any councillor who wants to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Henry Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I've agreed with all the speakers tonight. The Werribee tip, the RDF, whatever you want to call it, provides a very valuable service to the Wyndham community. What also disappoints me is that many other councils actually dump their waste down at Werribee, because we are short on landfills in and around metropolitan Melbourne, inner metropolitan Melbourne, and on the outer fringes of metropolitan Melbourne. And I have no doubt that there isn't a council in Victoria that doesn't do a great deal of work in trying to help their communities deal with waste and to recycle, and to actually, as Councillor Marcus said before, you know, take things to the charity shops, or do a swap, or get a hard waste collection and we pick it up and we try to do something with it. And it's affecting what's happening with us at the moment, where we had the EPA approvals, the major government organisation that is sent out to monitor what happens at tips in Victoria, and they granted us the permit. The local environmental group, I have no doubt, are quite within their democratic rights to take us to an appeal. That's one of the things that last week we celebrated Anzac Day, and that's what the Anzacs fought for our democratic right to be able to have your say, whether you're right, wrong, or indifferent. You're allowed to have your say. And I feel, because we've already had a number of organisations, councils, had to make other arrangements to take their waste somewhere else at great expense to their ratepayers as well. And I think that that's unfortunate. I agree with these three reports that we've had tonight, that we have to go ahead and start preparing in the hope that the tribunal will find in ours and the EPA's favour that we should go ahead and get these cells built so that we can actually continue to take waste from not only our own people but from people around Melbourne. And of course, and I mentioned before, we're being proactive. We're not just waiting and sweating on having the ability to fill a hole or a tip mountain, as people tend to call it. We're actually out there looking at
30 seconds, Councillor Barrow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're out there constructively looking at finding alternative, modern methods of actually handling our waste. So we're not sitting on our hands waiting for a tribunal to come up with an okay for us. We're actually out there looking at the future and looking at ways that we can help dispose of waste that can't be recycled.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Any other councillor want to speak? Councillor Marcus.
I've got to get my words in sooner or later tonight. Seeing you cut me short. No, I want to concur with Councillor Barlow. But if the residents knew exactly what went into building a cell, it's quite extraordinary. And the other thing what I want to say is that when we receive waste from other cities, every night a layer of clay is put across that rubbish. So, and we have the leachate ponds, and if I can say this before, we are supplying gas to 3,000 to 4,000 homes, what we are capturing already. So as Henry said, or Councillor Barlow said, we are proactive, we are working, and once these cells are full, they will be beautifully landscaped. So if any of you want to go onto the website and have a look what they've done overseas with their refilled land sites, you can have playgrounds, you can have absolutely everything, and it's just so sad that we have an organisation that are trying to stop their landfills from going a little bit higher, and it's only 24 feet, which will go above that. But this council must stay very firm, because we have, as I said before, a responsibility to our residents and to the residents, because as Councillor Barlow said, there's probably only 4 of these landfills left. We are creating this rubbish, this litter that's getting spread all over our city every day. We've created it, and we've got to make sure that we work on it now, because if we don't, we've got the biggest monster that is going to kill the whole environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any other councillors who want to speak for and against?
So, just finish up if anyone else wants to go.
Oh yeah, I'll just make a quick point if I can. Maybe. I think it's worth commending the, I guess the uniqueness of the way we've tried to approach this. I mean, we have asked for the Minister to intervene. I mean, how much more could you possibly ask? I mean, if the Minister doesn't intervene, and let's just get real here, if the Minister doesn't intervene and this goes the wrong way, in combination with a recycling crisis, the entire state is going to devolve into having landfill and a heap of flies at the front of every single property as material decomposes in the front of them. And as they put the kids in the car and reverse out, the kids ask, how the hell could the government get this so wrong? Now, I think absolutely, in terms of moving forward, that is exactly the sort of intelligence around how we have sought to deal with this issue. I take the very considered points of Councillor Barlow about the right, of course, to appeal, but I mean, in the context of the crisis that we've got, not only in recycling, but also in landfill, it makes it very, very clear the Minister has an opportunity still to clean up this mess. And I certainly hope the Minister does at least reply to us to let us know what they intend to do. But if they're prepared to take it through the judicial process, so be it. But we certainly wouldn't mind an answer. So I just thought I'd add that into the context, given we're spending a considerable time on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Any other speaker?
Anyone?
Councillor Tony Hooper, you want to speak?
Look, I just want to finalise all this, I think, with a comment from someone who's lived in this community for quite some time. He's got kids growing up in this community and loves this community. That tip is just amazing with what it does and what we're looking at doing with it. We've got a delegation overseas looking at different technologies, asking the question, if you could do it over again, what would you do? Because if we're going to be a world leader in waste management, we need to know what the world could improve upon. Not what we could do and copy, but what we can do better. And if we can do it better, if we can create energy out of that garbage and actually use it to build kindergartens, roads, libraries, all those things that our community is crying out for, then why wouldn't we look at it? Why would we not collect that waste and turn it into something that we can actually convert into what this community is desperately needing? So I look forward to seeing how this unfolds in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Any other speakers? There being none, councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. 8.4, external borrowings. LGBFB bond issuance. Report is in pages 119 to 121. Recommendation page 120. No attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover?
Mr Deputy Mayor, I'd just like to clarify and change the recommendation on 3, where it says from briefing to council, to resolution of council. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's an administrative error that needs to be replaced. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
So, thank you. So, amended.
Can I speak on it, Deputy Mayor?
No, I have a mover. No mover yet.
Yep.
You're moving? Okay. Seconder? Andrew Barrow. Councillor Andrew Barrow. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I support the council borrowing a further $15 million through the participation in the 10-year bond proposed to be issued through the local government funding vehicle. The amount of $15 million is in line with our 2017-18 budget. The borrowings will fund the council's capital works program, including projects that will be delivered under the Wyndham West DCP. This will be the third issuance which council will participate in with the funding vehicle, which was established to provide the Victorian local government entities with a cost-effective access to debt markets. Council's outstanding borrowings are measured in line with the metrics set by the Victorian Auditor General and reported as part of council's annual results. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Do you have a speaker against? Any other speaker for the motion? Any other councillor who want to speak on the motion? Okay. Councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Next on the agenda, item 9, contract summary, meal reports. So next on the agenda is item 10, questions with notice from the public gallery. Madam CEO, are there any public questions this evening?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. We do have 2 questions this evening. I just need to confirm that Arnav Sati is in the gallery. Thank you. So we've received 2 questions this evening, Mr Deputy Mayor, from Arnav Sati. So I'll read the first question and then ask one of our directors for a response. So the first question pertains to car parking at Tarneit railway station. So the question reads, the car parking situation at Tarneit station is at a crisis level. What's Wyndham City Council's immediate action to address this crisis? And has the council got the required support from the state government to appropriately address this issue? So through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, I will ask our Acting Director, City Economy, Innovation and Livability, Mr Peter McKinnon, to respond.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Thank you, Arnav, for that question. Council acknowledges the existing Tarneit rail station. In fact, all of our rail stations across the municipality does not meet commuter or community needs. Since its construction, Council has been liaising with Public Transport Victoria on improving both the car park and bus services to and from that particular facility. We've made a number of budget and advocacy submissions to the state government and requesting funding for additional car parking and additional servicing. So far, these multiple requests have not progressed, and so much so in terms of the budget announcements so far to date, the state government, we still haven't seen any success in that regard. The most recent action we've sent a letter to the Minister for Public Transport, Jacinta Allen, in mid-April, seeking a specific meeting to discuss the lack of parking and bus service to this particular rail station. We'll keep the community informed of any developments as they occur. Thank you.
Thank you for that response through you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The second question is quite a detailed one, so we will provide a verbal response this evening to you, but we'll also follow up in writing as well, just so you've got a record of that, given the level of detail requested. So the second question relates to the issuing of parking fines, and it asks how much or how many parking fines have been collected, so how much money has been collected by the Wyndham City Council from Tarneet, Hoppers Crossing, Werribee and Williams Landing train stations since July 2015. And thank you for providing your question earlier, because it has meant that we're able to provide some detail in regards to that this evening. But as I said, through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, we will follow that up in writing as well. So through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'll ask our Acting Director, City Operations, Mr Shane Walden, to respond.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and thank you for your question, Arnav. Council does not have jurisdiction on the issues of parking fines within train station car parks. This is managed by Public Transport Victoria, and in writing we'll provide you with some details so you can contact them, and we'll also seek your permission so we can also forward on your concerns. The following information responds to specific questions you provided about the individual train stations. So Tarneet train station, Council can only issue infringements on the access road, Leeds Road entry, and from the 1st of July 2015 there have been 2,921 infringements issued in that area. At Williams Landing train station, in the streets adjacent to the train station, Council has issued 985 infringement notices since the 1st of July 2015. With regards to the Hoppers Crossing and Werribee train stations, Council patrols the streets surrounding these areas, but however those that are infringed may not be in relation to the stations, and so therefore the number of infringements that are linked to the rail travel can't be determined. Thank you. Thank you, Madam CEO.
Thanks very much through you, Mr Deputy Mayor. That ends the questions for this evening, but as I said through you, Deputy Mayor, we're happy to provide follow-up on any of those questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Next on the agenda is item 11, Councillor Delegates Reports. Report is in pages 122 to 123. Recommendation, page 122. Attachments, pages 124 to 132. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor John Gibbons. Seconder? Councillor Tony Hopper. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Gibbons? Any speaker against? Anybody wants to speak for or against the motion? Councillor McElhenney.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to speak on the Audit and Risk Committee. I'd just like to say that our Chair, Mrs Gay Mason, will be concluding her term after 6 years on the 6th of June, and we're currently in the process of recruiting a new chair for this very important position. So we're currently undertaking interviews, and we will be announcing a new chair probably in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Do any councillors wish to speak to the reports this evening? Councillor Henry Barlow.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Look, we had our portfolio meeting, Cultural Diversity, on Thursday the 14th of March. Great attendance by the community who were on this committee, and we spoke about a number of issues. One in particular I would like to highlight that we are in the throes of investigating the Welcoming Cities initiative. It was presented to us on the night, and obviously this is to highlight and to promote and improve social cohesion and inclusion in municipalities such as ours with a growing multicultural populations. Now, we've been doing a lot of work, even in the short period of time that I've been back on council, in dealing with ethnic communities of many different backgrounds. I wish I had $1 for everybody that's come to see me in discussing about their community, whether they be of various backgrounds from the South Asian community to the African communities to the Pacific Islander communities, whether it's just one person that comes to talk to us or whether there's a number, because we are one of the key cities in Australia in actually welcoming people of all backgrounds and all religious backgrounds, and this is an initiative that some cities, municipalities are taking on board, is the Welcoming Cities one, and I happen to also be on the multicultural committee for the MAV, of which Councillor Gilligan is the chairperson of. And we're doing a fair amount of work on that as well, I must admit, and it's some really good stuff. So I just wanted to highlight that out of the report, because I think it's important that we send a very clear message to everyone that we are a city that does welcome people from all over the world, which we mentioned last night, Mr Deputy Mayor, that you facilitated the citizenship ceremony last night, and it was made quite clear that people come to Wyndham from all the four corners of the earth. And I think that that's something we should always remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Any other councillor who wants to speak to the report? As councillors, I now put the motion to a vote. All in favour? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Next on the agenda, item 12, urgent business. Neil. Next is item 13, confidential business. Can I have a mover?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd like to put the motion that pursuant to section 89 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 1989, standing orders be suspended and this meeting of council be closed to members of the public.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. You're the mover. Any seconder?
Mr Deputy Mayor, I'd like to move a motion that the recommendations of the closed meeting of council with regard to confidential matters be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Do we have a seconder? Councillor John Evans. Councillors, any discussion? Those in favor? Against? Motion is carried. Item 14, close of meeting. I declare the meeting closed at
8:44.
8:44.
To be precise.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Walter. Great job.